Francis Wheeler Bailey from Mallow. Excuse me. And then another teacher came whose name was Miss Law. I didn't know much about Miss Law, but she taught the older students. And my last teacher at Summerlee was Mrs. Evelyn Kessler Killian Stokes, who is also related to some of you here, to the Kesslers. Excuse me. I was frightened to death of coming from Summerlee to Dubois. But one thing that eased my transition, I'm going to sit down shortly, eased my transition from Summerlee to Dubois was none other than our 8th grade commencement speaker, who was Mr. I.S. Lees. I don't want to get choked up. And he remembered me when I came to Dubois, and he directed me in many ways. And other teachers helped, Mrs. Lee's helped. We were taught public speaking, he taught agriculture, vocational agriculture, the New Farmers of America. My distinguished friend here, Winifred Stone, was a great member of the New Farmers of America, who became state president, as I recall. So there were many things that took place, and it would take me half an hour to really tell you the impressions that were made. All of the teachers at Dubois were kind to us. They helped us in many ways. I went places. I'd never been to, my mother was afraid for us to go any place. I'd never been to Charleston, Huntington. Mr. Lees took us there, to West Virginia State College, and to Douglas High School, and to Ghana, and other places, to the Capitol. And Mr. Ash, who was one of my favorite teachers in my freshman year, I want to say this about him. He recognized that I had certain qualities, and he helped me to pursue them. I had not, as I say, I had not been any place. And my friend Lloyd Lane, I don't know whether he's here or not, but he had been to Philadelphia one summer. And he came back telling me what a great time he had in Philadelphia, and I was jealous. And I said, oh, you haven't been to Philadelphia. And Mr. Ash said to me, Joe, son, he said, there is a wide world beyond Gauley Mountain.
How many people in here, parents work in the mines? Oh, fascinating. That's another whole story. That you need to do at your next trip. You really need to deal with the mine. But Stuart, you said something yesterday. You gotta tell me what it was like to get from. See, this physical, this endurance, getting up these mountains fascinates me. Tell me what it was to get from your house to school. Tell me about going to school.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm Stuart Howard Frazier Jr. Son of Brother Stuart Howard Frazier Sr. The one that impressed all the impressions of getting education on me with a hickory stick. Well, it's interesting. All of the places that you would use for memory, I don't have those. I was born in Roy, West Virginia. And I don't know how many of you know where Roy is. That's no longer in Canada. Right? I went to school at Claremont, West Virginia. And I hope you know where that is, up New River and past Stone Cliff. And now that building is gone. I went to, we moved from Thurman. We lived in Thurman, and that's when we went to Claremont. And Thurman, I remember as starting off in elementary school, we happened to walk off of the hill across the railroad track. Incidentally, my father was a railroad person. He was a miner. We had to walk off the hill, down the railroad track, by the station, cross the bridge to catch the bus. And I remember always going on.
That's about now.
Yeah, it's about a mile. It's about a mile across the river. And I remember going there first year, and nobody walked me across that river. I went along with some of the other children. I don't know if my parents carried me by the hand, standing by the school buses when the bus left. They could watch, they could look from the house over across the river and know that I got on the school bus and went there. But I had a green lunchbox, jeans, and We moved out of Thurman after the hill slid in. It was a mudslide, and all the houses up there moved down, almost fell down on the river track. Then we moved to Hart. To Prudence. And I went to Prudence Elementary School in grade 8. That school no longer exists. So I go back to the church where it up the hill there, and I stay in there now, and I don't understand how we went to school there on the side of the hill and we had no playground. I don't understand. But I guess my first impression of education came from Prudence Elementary. My first grade teacher in Claremont was Miss Swope. She was still there someday. And I don't know who else for that, but two little schools, but too many teachers didn't go around. Every school I went to was 2 rooms. That Prudence, his cousin. I don't know if anybody remembers. Yeah. Well, Miss Cousin, I think, got me started. I remember one day in class, she stood up before everyone and told him I wasn't going to be nothing in school, in life. And Vera Crawl was in class, and I liked Vera. And she said, Vera, I don't know why you like him. He can't even do arithmetic. Well, I tell you, she crushed me. That crushed me. The school was out, everybody was laughing at me, and I was trying to fight the whole neighborhood home. I mean, I was whipping up on everybody, and they was whipping up on me. Girls and boys. I never knew that. And my mother, my sister and brother had gone home and told mom, and my mother came up on the hill and saw me, and she hollered at me, June! That's what they call me. When she does that, June Frazier, I knew it's time to go. Stop! So I went home, and then she told Dad, and he whipped me for it. But anyway, and I left, when I graduated 8th grade, went to Dubois, and the first thing I did was got on honor roll my first year there. I went back and told Miss Swope. I got on honor roll again, and I went back and told Miss Cousin. Well, it got kind of good to me then after a while, so I stopped making honor roll and I didn't tell her. But I guess going to Dubois, it was kind of a new thing for me. It's like Joe here, coming out of Harvey, and I don't know, it was also, some people felt like nothing came out of Harvey. But I had a father that wouldn't let me fail. He didn't take report cards with less than passing grades. He wouldn't accept those. So I didn't dare hide the card, but so I always had to at least make passing grades. But I guess that's where but I guess Dubois was pretty challenging. And I always have to say, going through the 4 years of Dubois, Mr. Leach played a major part in me going to college. I had no aspiration for college. I didn't even know what college was like. I heard about Booker T. Washington, I heard about all these fellows, but I didn't know what they were because I'd never been out of state. When the first time I went out of state, I was in West Virginia, and then we went through Virginia, and I remember somebody said we were going into Virginia, and I was so naive, I thought that something was going to raise up, and it was going to be a whole different world. But I had the grace of God enough to give me enough power wisdom to keep my mouth shut that I was ignorant. Like I was looking at the window trying to see what Virginia looked like. But Mr. Lee's, I remember graduating from Dubois after going through the struggles there and trying to maintain passing grade. Senator Roebuck offered a $200 scholarship to anyone that's finishing vocational agriculture that want to go to college. And I believe out of that class, I'm the only one that thought about going to college. So I got the $200 scholarship. Then I found out that United Mine Workers also offered some type of money. And if your father had worked in the mine, well, we struggled with that, but Dad did say he worked in the mine before I knew him. So, well, we got a little bit of that money together, and that's where I ended up at West Virginia State College. But getting to West Virginia State College was not easy. But even then, I didn't feel like I should go to college because we had lost our home in a fire in 1948, and they were still there back here living in very dark conditions. And I did not feel it was worthy of me to go off to college and leave my sisters and brothers and my parents started living in very dire conditions in a house and struggling to build another house. So I decided I wanted to go to the military. I was only 17, but unfortunately, my father wouldn't sign for me to go. He wouldn't sign. So today, when some of the guys got together that finished Dubois to go sign up, they would go pick me up. They didn't come pick me up to go sign up. And my dad hadn't signed anyway, so it was useless. But I remember they packed my bags. They packed my bags and put me on the train. Followed me on there. We had a pass. So I got free transportation from Thurman to Charleston. But I had been to Western State College on and off with Mr. Lees, because Mr. Paris down there with the Navy, and so I pretty much knew what Western State was. But so I went to Western State College for maybe about $500, and the rest of the money came by working, babysitting, working on farms, and things like that. But I would have to say, because where I am now in life did not come because I had great dreams of that I was going to do this or that. It always came at one crisis in my life after another. When I got to Western State, well, there was no point coming back home. There was nothing left there to do. Either do a job in the sawmill or work in the coal mines. And I had tried both of those and they didn't work. And so I knew I wasn't coming back there, so I did everything I could to stay in school by odd jobs, getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, milking cows, working on the farm for the summer, cutting hay, driving tractors. Then I got rich. I got rich. I got into advanced ROTC and I started making a little money there. Then I got a job with a veterinarian in Charleston. He had an apartment over top of his clinic, and I moved into this apartment over top of his clinic, cleaned up the clinic at night, and helped on weekends with the dogs, and then, so for 2 years, that's where I stayed, in Charleston, Western State College. And that's how I kept money going. I just couldn't, there was no money to go sit back home for. There was no money there. I knew my mother was working sometimes, and I would see the letter come and it'd be $4 or $5, and there was no money there, so I tried. But I had saved up enough money to even buy me a raggedy car. And that was the car I gave my father when I graduated from Washington State College, and I left that with him. 47 more. I knew it would make it all the way to Oklahoma. But education is where I am now. When I graduated from Washington State College, well, I didn't really know what to do. And saving grace was I was in ROTC, and that gave me a little break to figure out. So I was commissioned and went into the military. And I met Rogers. I didn't know he was a West Virginia grad, and he was my company commander at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, when they transferred me there. I knew he was West Virginia State College, but I didn't know he was from Dubois. We can talk about stuff like this. I'm so glad that I saw a black soldier, officer, that cared about my weaknesses. I was socially inadequate, everything inadequate. But when he got transferred, I almost cried. I lost somebody. Then that's when they put me in with the West Pointers, Texas A&M officers. And I went into a outfit that racism just had been integrated 1 year after I got there, 54. And I go up yell for these white officers.
Okay, let's hold that.
Okay. Thing to do, and I admired. My wife said, "What are you gonna do?" I said, "I don't know." I said, "I got a degree to teach." She said, "You can't teach in North Carolina because you don't have enough education." I said, "Well, good. I'm not going back to school to be another teacher because 2 teachers in the household is enough. 1 is enough." But I met Jimmy Carter's brother-in-law, Dr. Stapleton. He was a veterinarian in Fayetteville, and I remember walking into him asking, "How can I get to veterinary school?" He said, something did come. And Mr. Cousins, I hope you still live. I would like to say, I did do something.
It's fabulous, I can't touch that.
I did the primary and first grade together. By the time I got to Mrs. Cousins' room, she said I was smart. Just thought I'd throw that in. There were perks, both in the community and in the church. And I have to bring that in, because in church, there was Sunday school. And if you could speak, read well, etc., you could teach Sunday school. I taught Jean. That told you that you were smart. In Hilltop, where I lived, people didn't say that you were smart. They asked you, are you going to Bluefield State or West Virginia State? You had choices, but those were your only choices. But you knew you were going. And everything was geared to that. At Dubois, we had Dorothy Harris, who taught us manners, grooming, how to sit, how to set the table. She said, you must be prepared. In fact, come to think of it, all of them said, you must be prepared when the door opens. You did not learn something because you needed it today. You learned it because you need it tomorrow. But you must be prepared. But the other thing, Mrs. Cousins said, I would make it.
Sexism.
It is great to hear the influences of certain teachers. You know, it was like they molded some of us. Some of us got molded, I mean really molded. And there was always one person who helped you make it in their own special ways. In their own special way. And it seemed to know what child they could take and make that child rise beyond anything else. Sometimes it was kind of scary, because if you didn't have anyone to articulate for you, or to tell that you thought you were a diamond, they sometimes didn't think that, because we dealt with some other things, didn't we? We dealt with some color lines, and we dealt with some, income lines. We dealt with, there's a whole class strata that nobody seems to understand that exists in the black community. It exists. It exists. It has always existed. It is not just a case of the field slave and the house slave. We've always had classes. And they are very much a part of our livelihood. And the segregated schools certainly gave us that. But the integrated schools gave us even worse in some instances. Because that kind of hands-on molding didn't often happen after we left. Wherein one student survived very well in a segregated school and was nurtured and would move on, and somebody else would take on someone else. Sometimes with the integrated school, that didn't happen for our children. I need to talk about something. Last night, a gentleman gave me a photograph. He gave me a photograph of him in a football uniform. Now I'm trying to figure out. Stuart's already told me you don't have any place to play. How can you play football? I need somebody to talk to me about that. And I want the ladies to talk to me. This is not an all-male conversation. And, all right. All right, Betty.
Betty Salmon.
Salmon, okay.
Well, she said talk. Well, I remember, I go back, recalling, we come from the coal field. The town that I was born in no longer exists. It was in Raleigh County, a little mining camp called Birchton, West Virginia, next to Whitesville. That still exists. But I recall moving to Mount Hope, and we moved in the house that's just below where Dubois High School used to be. I remember moving into this big house because where we lived, there were 3 bedrooms. I can see the kitchen now with the coal stove, the fireplace, and it was an old mining camp house. Now, when we moved to Mount Hope, I just knew we were moving to the city because it was 10 of us. We had a big family. We moved to this big house on top of Dubois Hill. And my sister and I shared rooms. That meant my brothers, they had their own room. We had this big house. And I recall Dubois High School on the hill. And as a child, I remember having to walk off of Dubois Hill all the way to the elementary school, which was over in Turkey Knob in the bottom. And we had to go across this little river, a log, that took us over to the elementary school. Now, I moved to Mount Hope when I was in the 3rd grade. And like she said, I got left back in the 3rd grade. Because in Birchton, we went to a 1-room school. I can recall that school where all the children from 1st grade through whatever grade, all was in 1 room. And you had 1 teacher, and she taught each class a little bit at a time. So when I moved to Mount Hope and they had a school with individual classrooms, I guess I was at that stage in kindergarten compared to Mount Hope. But we walked to the elementary school through rain, snow, or sleet. Those who know where Mount Hope High, Dubois High School was on top of that hill, all the way down to Turkey Knob, which we didn't have school buses. I guess it was a good 2 or 3 miles. I don't know the distance, but it was a good ways. But all the children used to walk together. I can remember walking in the snow with our boots and our little snow coats and hats and gloves, and your fingers get so cold and your toes that they feel like they're gonna come off. But we made it through to that elementary school. Now, I recall when we were in the 6th grade in elementary school, we had a minstrel. And we gave this little minstrel show. And I can remember singing Slow Boat to China. And a little song about my knees. I always said these little naughty knees. But anyway, Miss Fleming, she had just started being the music teacher at Dubois High School. And she saw all of us that was singing in this minstrel show. And she said, well, you're gonna be in my choir. So when we finished 6th grade, we went to the 7th grade at Dubois. There was another building in the back of the high school, and that's where the 7th grade went. And I think Mr. Ash was our teacher at that particular time. Now, when I went to Mount Hope, Dubois High School, my grandparents lived in Gary. So I didn't always stay in Mount Hope during the summer months. I used to go visit my grandmother. And the summer that I was at my grandmother's house, that's the summer that the school blew up. So when we came back from school, the high school was no longer there. I think I must have went up there to the high school like 1 year before the school blew up. And that following year, we had to go to the school down where the lumber yard was at the First Baptist Church. We went to school at the First Union Church. We went to school at the other building on the side of one of those little streets. I don't recall the name, but I remember we had to go to school in these various locations at that particular time. And going back to the part, I didn't get to the part where my father, he worked in the coal mine as well. And that's basically the thoughts that I had at this particular time. But Miss Fleming was my music teacher who took me under her arms. And she groomed her group of girls that she spent a lot of time. And like today, I give Miss Fleming a lot of praise for what she instilled in us, because your teachers were part of your extended family. You went to the same church, you lived in the same community, and they were like part of your family.
Fabulous. You raised an issue. And I know someone in this room knew I was gonna ask this issue. The school that blew up. Can we talk about it? I want to talk about the school that blew up. What happened to the school that blew up? I've heard all kinds of things. There were no ballers in the school. So tell me about the school. What happened to the school?
I was away when it blew up, so I don't
Did you hear anything about what happened? What happened with the school?
I have a little thing in here. I hope everybody writes. I wrote a little. Gene is always after somebody to do something. I hope everybody reads my little story in there, so I won't talk.
Tell us.
About. But I put a fib in there. I don't know if it's true or not. But my impressions, I'm going to just talk a little bit about this so you can read it. But when that school grew up, I was 10 years old. And as Betty said, when we moved to Mount Hope and various programs, they would walk. People didn't have cars. They didn't carry their kids back and forth in cars. They walked. The prom really impressed me because everybody looked like princesses and princes. They were in these gowns and the suits, and they just looked so gorgeous. And that was my desire to be able to dress like that and go to the school on the hill. And looking at the teachers, the staff, being a little girl and having gone to the movies and seeing in the movies everybody with these beautiful clothes on, well, staff to me, they were also these beautiful motion picture people because they were all dressed in these beautiful clothes. I remember going to the school. They had, as Betty said, they used to have those minstrels. Well, they had the little kids perform too, and fashion shows, and I remember all dressed up. I remember a little pair of red shoes my mom bought, and I must have really carried on so that I can remember the audience just clapping and laughing. And I must have really showed those little red shoes off. But it was so great, the things that happened, and seeing people that were older than I was. And I told some of the guys, I can remember when the football players showered, the water, I don't know why, the water ran down our street. It's like a sewer system. But I would get out and run up and down in that soapy water and splash it. So it must have not had a sewer system. But it was so much fun to me, and I just splashed in that water. But my impressions were, I just wanted to go to that place. And when it did blow up, and having been a little kid and hearing so many stories, at one time a cross was burned on top of Turkey Knob, and I remember everybody saying KKK. Well, when the school blew up, that was my first impression. Oh God, the KKK is blowing up the place. And seeing the flames, our windows blew out, bricks flew all down, and that was my first impression. And my mom ran out and called us, and we ran out and saw the flames. And the first thing I was telling Barbara Lease, there was, what was it, the Lease family and the Jasper family, were they hurt? Were they okay? When we found that out, then we could concentrate on that school. But it was such a horrible thing, that glass, and hearing the glass, and we didn't know what the bricks were. And then the next morning, when we got up, that smell, it was just like we had seen in the movies, a worn, torn place. And we did venture up eventually, and to see all the rubble with the steel and everything sticking out of it, but I could still smell that smell in the smoke. And property that ran along the school, everything was just burned up. And I remember Barbara saying how the firemen had to sit on their porch to make sure the flames didn't start again. So it was something very traumatic and life-lasting. Those thoughts, the smells, and the sights. It's still, I'm sure, the same for the Lease family and the Jaspers. It was something terrifying to us.
Well, as Danny knows, we have to talk in college many hours. He's a regular professor, I suppose, in college. I've taught at different places. But I want to say to Mr. Stewart, I want to say that your father was a prince from heaven. And I hope he was a prince from heaven. When you talk about I.S. Leach, it's not like the white man who says, that's the best friend I have. But I.S. Leach was a comrade in arms of mine. And I knew him probably better than any of you know him. I knew his philosophy, how he spoke, the breath that went out. How he went out and how they consumed, and how he really believed gardens were the eternity for man. I asked these, he went with me to the institution. We saw the mentally ill. We saw the terminally ill. And he would go with me every place that he could go in his retirement. And you talk about Mrs. Emma Robinson. I knew this lady probably as well as any of you. She was a beautiful lady, even to the day that she died. Yes.
Bob, rules of the ball game.
All right.
Dubois.
All
Dubois.
Well,
Stay with Dubois.
Well, okay.
Stay with Dubois. Come on.
It was Simmons High School. That was the only other segregated school in the county. And I can remember Mrs. Wood from that school. These people I'm talking about, though, Philly Jackson, Tom Ash, and all these people came out of Dubois. I like to talk, and they relate. The only thing I want you to say is, like you mentioned the KKK, nobody has been despised more by me than the white people, and nobody probably despised by more than the black people. So I probably can't follow your rules. I'll just sit there. All right, because I didn't like the man, but he couldn't obey the rules. I believe in following the rules.
Well, I do. Because that's what today loves to survive. That's the rule. We need to make the rules.
May I just speak about two things about football? And all of you know I couldn't play football. Because I went out for football because the girls like football players.
Yeah.
They finally, the fellas had to go all the way to the stadium someplace to practice, but finally they dug out the hillside for them to practice. I don't know how they practice on it. So I decided one day I would go and ask Coach Scott, and all of you knew Coach Scott, he was always frankly speaking. I went up and he said, what do you want? He was right. He was right. He said, what do you want, Joe? And I said, I'm going out for football, Coach Scott. He said, you better get the hell away from me. I only went about 50
He's sitting right here.
But what I did hear, the rumor that I did hear, 1950, I think, when the school burned, that was after my freshman year. The school that needed to be torn down, it was great structural damage already. So it was rumored that the chemistry lab blew up, so I don't know really what happened. Thank you.
Yes.
Since football was mentioned, I'd like to have something to say. But I'd like to preface my remarks by saying I thank God, my father, and my mother, and Dubois High School in that order.
Please give us your name.
Don Stroud is my name. Dubois and the folks who were at that school have been the greatest influence on my life. And since Joe mentioned football, I was late coming for practice. That hill was dug out. Coach Scott was so much of an authoritarian and a discipline. He would make the running backs run around the flat area and then up the hill to train and strengthen your legs. And when I got there that day, I asked him, could I play? And he said, so you want to play football? He said, I don't have any more equipment, and he threw a pair of cleats in my chest and a jersey on. He said, you're late and you don't get any equipment. You want to play, boy? I said, yes, I want to play. First day, having been in school that had been burned down the year before, in football practice, and he calls a scrimmage. And I do not even have a helmet. And he said to me, you want to play? I said, yes. What do you want to do? I want to be a running back. He says, okay, you play line. And this dent right here in my nose. Somebody ran in my face. And I got up and he said, you want to play? I said, yes, sir. I want to play. I'm not bragging, but there's some people who know me around the country said O.J. Simpson couldn't carry my cleats. There were 7 cleats on each shoe. And every Friday night we would play, I would give the cleats away to the girls and they'd sweep. They would make chains out of it. But it was an opportunity to learn to be disciplined. I.S. Lease was one of the greatest influences. He formed what was called a public speaking contest with 17 states in the District of Columbia. And you had to win at the state level, then you win at the district level, and then you go to the national level. His wife helped me write the speeches that he and Earl Smith taught me how to convey. I went all the way to Atlanta to the national speaking, and people took up money to fly me back to play in a football game. Never been on an airplane before in my life, but when we got back, Coach Scott said to me, you want to play? I said, of course, yes, because at this point in time, I had a few touchdowns under my belt. He said, no, you don't play, because you didn't make practice. You were in Atlanta speaking, you don't play. And maybe into the second quarter, a chant went up. We won't struggle. Ironically led by my home crowd. So after punishing me, he said, okay, go in. And in 2 plays, I went 65 yards for a touchdown. He took me out of the ball game and he said, you think you can play, don't you? But I knew then what to say. No, sir. He made me sit down, and I remember we were playing Douglas that night. And of course, after Stratton, Douglas was, and Garner was our major opponent. The honor of going to Dubois and playing football, I could be here talking all day and all night, but I just want to leave with one other major point in my life. I was a pretty good baseball player, and I decided to come to play for Post 70 here in Beckley. And there was an old alloy bus that used to go through the town picking us up. I got out early after having made the mistake of being late for practice and football, and I thumbed a ride to Oak Hill. I was so early I decided to go down to the ballpark and see what was going on down there as the American Legion teams were getting ready to play. And I saw 5 young black boys who were sitting down, and I asked them what was going on. And they said, he, meaning the coach, who was white, won't let us play. So I said to the coach, I said, I'd like to play. He said, yeah, what do you play, boy? I said, I'm a pitcher. And he laughed. He said, you can pitch? I said, yes, I can pitch. I'm 15 years old now, after having been burnt by Coach Scott the year before. I knew how to stand up for myself. So he got a catcher's mitt and he said, let me see what you got, boy. And I popped off a few to him, and it looked pretty good to him. He said, so you think you can pitch? I said, yeah. But what you just saw, it looked better from out there on that mound. And he let me go out to pitch on the mound. He said, okay, you can play. I said, no, you got to give them Them 5 black boys, you gotta give them an opportunity to play, because I'm on my way to Beckley to play against you. And not wanting to let that happen, he gave them a chance, and 3 of them made the starting team. I never came to Beckley to play for the Black American Legion, but to this day, I don't even know that post that I played for. Never lost a ball game. I pitched against Dewey Norman, and can't even think of the other brother who played for the Pirates.
Earl Francis.
There you go. Never lost to them. But that wasn't my goal in life. My goal was to serve what my mom left me with. And I would ask her every Sunday morning when she would come home, having spelled white folks for us for a week, what she wanted me to be in life. She would say to me, well, what do you want to be? And I, of course, didn't know. She said, you be anything that you want to be. But if you want to be what I want you to be, it's to be a good boy. And I'm trying to do that. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Well, if any of you know my father, you know he stuttered terribly. And I have encouraged that. So if I falter in between, you'll know. Well, I'm Barbara Lee Spell. I didn't know all these stories. It's great. And I live right beside you boys, and I got a very pleasant or a very exciting celebration for my 50th birthday. The school blew up. And I didn't know what it was, and we heard this big explosion and wondered what was that, and looked out and the school's on fire. And that was scary. I mean, we were scared to death. We didn't know what had happened, or who did it, or why, or what was going on. But I think we were glad to see the school burn down. Because it meant something. We didn't know what it meant, but we were glad to have the school burn down. And so, but we didn't do it. We really didn't. The house was much too close to that school. And they had to pour water on our house, the pastor's house, and they kept pouring water until the firemen got tired and sat down. But anyway, the house was saved. Both my parents believed very heavily in education, and so they pushed all these gentlemen, which I did not know, and ladies, which is heartwarming to me. What I got from them was education, but I knew I did not want to be a teacher. I was not going to be a teacher. I didn't care what I was going to be, but I was not going to be a teacher, because if you're in the classroom and give everybody, imitate your father, and criticize your mother because she was so strict, it was not a good feeling. But I felt good about it. But I'm glad you know the stories, and thank you all.
You asked Howard Scott, you asked about the blowing up, and I'm going to try to get to that. But first of all, I want you to know that I'm the nephew of George Scott, and I was getting a little disappointed because he hadn't been mentioned. I played 5 years of football, but that's not where I remember George Scott from. My knuckles was always sore. And I remember Stone and Joe and the Boag. I remember cutting all the teachers' yards and trimming the trees, and I didn't go that route. I went into Miss Harris's home economics class. I had enough yard cutting and tree trimming at home. And you're looking at the first male president of the West Virginia Home Economics. I also played football, made all state. I remember, see, we had 2 schools to blow up in Mountain Hope. But y'all didn't know about that because y'all lived down in Prudence, Simile. But we had a little school that they were talking about over in Turkey Knoll. That school blew up too. We were pretty good in Mount Hope blowing up schools. I never will forget. After this first school burnt down, my mother, oh, by the way, my father was also a coal miner, and he was killed in the coal mines when I was 4 years old. But my mother was pretty spicy. and somehow or another, she tied the Board of Education's hand that they put the new school right in our front door. In fact, she gave them the property to put the school on. I could walk out of my steps and step on the school steps. I don't know why we got that close, but it was the truth. But I was so happy about that. I figured if anybody could sleep late, I could. And I remember one day we were out of school and I went up to Dubois. And Mr. Ash, bless his poor soul, I was so elated about our new school. And we've gone from a 2-room school to a 4-room school. I mean, we're really rolling up right now. And I was talking about all the new things we had in our school, and I never forget, he took me across the shoulder, he said, "Come here, son." And he looked straight over that school off Dubois Hill to the white elementary school, looked like a college over there. He said, "Red, that's a school." He said, "Now, I'll give your mom and them credit. They did a pretty good job down there in Turkey now." And never will forget him saying this, because I didn't understand what he was saying. He said, "They got the idea, and we need to do the same thing up here." I didn't have no idea what he was talking about, but a month later, that school blew up. And that's how we got the new Dubois school. There is no doubt in my mind, I can't prove it, but our parents burnt both of those schools.
I think this young lady is next. She has to be next, and then I'll get you. Okay.
My name is Willie May Whitler, my maiden name. I was born in Minden, West Virginia, on Arbuckle Creek and the C&O Railroad. And I have to say that the force has been with me from the time I was born. I think much of what I was born into, the way I was reared, made me more sensitive to the ills of the inner city today. I grew up in an extremely dysfunctional home where moonshine whiskey was sold. People bought the whiskey, my mother drank some of it. I also grew up at a time when older people could do what they wanted to do, but you couldn't do what they did. So, and that's why white people during the 60s did not understand why we had a tendency to look down. Because if you looked up, you were defiant. So you were supposed to look at the ground while your parents were talking to you. So I grew up during that era. I went to a 1-room schoolhouse. I grew up with people in my neighborhood were immigrants. And I was glad I grew up in that neighborhood because I developed an appreciation for all groups of people without regards to color. And when I say the force was with me, I got to go to Dubois. I left Minden, down on the creek bank from the holler with 8 kids. I think I was the only one to survive. And I never thought about that until I got 60 years old. But I was the only one of those 8 to survive. The only way, and I'll never forget, I saw Barbara Lee's, I saw Patricia Brooks, I saw all of these hip people from the city. They wrote down college prep on that when we were filling out an application to Dubois. I said, "Hey, that sounds nice." I wrote it down. So for the next 4 years, I was tracked. And again, that was the force. I was tracked in a college prep curriculum. Somebody didn't know what they were doing, and they invited me to Girls State, which was held at Clifftop. And for some strange reason, I'll never forget, and this is our Juanita Pack Harrison told us, "We're going to have you girls campaign for political office." And for some strange reason, I chose the superintendent of schools. And I got out and gave this speech about what I do for the schools and what was needed in West Virginia. And I don't know where the speech came from, the force again. I wasn't even the person who was giving the speech. And the lady came, it was an out-of-body experience. The lady came later and she asked me, she said, "Are you going to college?" I said, "No." And remember, I'd taken a college prep curriculum. She said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to join the Air Force." And in those days, if a woman went in the Air Force, you were considered a hoe. Anyway, I thought I didn't have to be a hoe, but I So she said, if I get you a job, would you go to college? I said, sure. So she got me a job at West Virginia State College, and I went. And we were paid $40 a month for working 3 times a day. Oh, but in the meantime, while I was in high school, my mother had sent me out. She said, the superintendent needs somebody to work. You go down there and take the job. Well, they gave me the job. Every day after 2:30, I went to work for this lady, the superintendent. And I walked up the railroad track at 9 o'clock at night, and nothing ever bothered me. The force was with me. So anyway, I graduated, and the people up at Dubois, somehow they got confused, and they elected me Miss Dubois. I don't know what was on their minds, but they elected me. And when I came home and I told my mother, I said, they elected me Miss Dubois. She said, you lost your mind with all the people up there. You know they ain't let you know Miss Dubois. So anyway, my mother went to the 3rd grade. She was reared in Virginia. Her mother had 9 kids. Father died, worked in the tobacco field. So she didn't understand. So my father took me out and bought me a suit, and we got through that. And the funny thing about it, nobody ever asked me for a report card. I signed my own report card. So now you can see how the force was taken. I didn't like X and I didn't like D. And anyway, I finished, I went to West Virginia State, finished, worked 7 days a week in the dining hall. And a girl told me from South Carolina, she said, hey, Pedro, everybody used to call me Pedro. And my grandmother used to call me Pete. And I asked my grandma, I said, why are you going to call me Pete? She said, because you look like a man named Pete. So when my friends in Dubois learned French or Spanish, they called me Pedro. So anyway, this girl told me from South Carolina, I said, why don't you come on, go to South Carolina? I said, sure, when does the train leave? So I went to South Carolina. I worked 5 years in the Columbia City schools. And one day, the boys told me to look up on the bulletin board. And I mean, working there was something. They gave you 32 kids with reading levels from nothing through 3rd grade. I had everything you could imagine in special ed. Kids left by the door, all kinds of things. And all of a sudden, I said to myself, what is going on here? What are these kids doing? And the boys told me, said, fool, you came out of the same background, so work with it. So I stayed there 5 years, and then the boys told me to look up on the bulletin board. I looked up on the bulletin board. Kennedy Foundation was giving away scholarships for people who wanted to major in special ed. So I applied for the scholarship. That was 1962. There was a white guy there. He said, this year I'm giving it to a black and I'm giving it to a white. So he gave me the scholarship. I could not go to the University of South Carolina. But they did me a favor, because I took it and went to Columbia University. So I was at Columbia 2 years, and I went from an elementary teacher to a college professor. They hired me at South Carolina State when I got back. And actually, and see, this is, you can see the force is still working. And I actually ran teacher education programs, took some of the first black, because I taught the student teachers into the white schools when they were integrated. So it was fascinating. And then while I was at Columbia, I also got involved in being black. It was during the 60s. So I married an African and started moonwalking. Because if you want to know how much American you are, they erased everything during slavery. It was like a computer erased. Nothing. Everything I had in common with the man was skin color. And somehow we stayed together. The culture was totally different. So after that, we stayed together, and God said, I'm going to send these 2 fools 3 children before they have a chance to think about it. That was the good part of it. I had 3 beautiful children, and they turned out quite well. And I see much of the African in which wasn't even taught, which tells you something about carrying the past in your genes. This particular tribe of people love the money. My kids haggle. They've never seen us haggle. They go in and of course they have that cockiness of Africans. Two of them don't even know they're black. They go in upside people and come out with a job. So anyway, from there, my husband and I moved to Philadelphia. And I had these 3 small kids, and I knew I couldn't teach college there. I also joined Grambling University and trained teachers there. So I knew I couldn't teach and be home at 3 o'clock. So I went to the school district of Philadelphia. Loved it. I had 8 or 10 jobs there. And like I said, I was glad I grew up in Minden. I was glad I grew up in a dysfunctional home because this helped me understand kids.
Yes.
And I've been in urban education. I got a bachelor's from West Virginia State in elementary education. I went to Temple University, and I went to the University of Pennsylvania and Temple University, and I got, I went to Columbia and got a degree in special ed, and then from Temple, I got a degree in urban education. And I have just loved working with inner city kids and their problems, because they have, in fact, one teacher told us, and we went to a school to speak on careers. She said, would you tell these kids, all of you tell these kids something about your life? And I told the kids about the dysfunctional home I grew up in, the whiskey, the fighting. My parents tried to kill each other. So, and then when one died, I couldn't understand why the other one was standing there crying. Mothers are with crack, or they spent the money which you're supposed to get from the welfare for crack. You care what happens to you. I told them I didn't like D's and F's. You care what happens to you. So when I finished the spiel, the kids held up their hands and they said it's like that in my home. And they have many worse problems than I did. So this has helped me be very sensitive to inner city kids. And one of the things I did when I got my doctorate, I went to Temple 15 years, but that was in the process of educating 3 kids, because an African is not going to pay you child support. Women are suppressed. You're supposed to bring your check home, give it to him, and say, please. But I have $5, please. But see, I never gave him my check. I grew up in Minden. People made when outsiders would come to Minden, sometimes they make them leave their shoes. So I had a bit of that meanness in it. I'm fabulous. Say that.
That's the fabulous Dubois story. Now here's a new rule. We have to ask you to limit. We only have about 40 more minutes that we can do this. And I'm going to ask you to try to limit it to about, your stories are fascinating. Just fascinating. I don't know whether you feel that today or not, but you ought to reserve a time in your reunion to do this every year. You really ought to do it.
And all of the accolades and everything that you said went for me. And Mr. Scott was my idol. And he said, walk and run through that wall. Walk and run through that wall. And take whoever's in front of him with me. I made all state. But the only thing about school burning down, you guys were about 10, 15 years late. I tried to burn it down in 45. We were in Mr. Lee's room. I said,
and we were in vocational agriculture. We was in there and had these big old stoves, three-tier stoves, and that thing got red hot and started falling over. And Alfred Smithers was in there with me, and James Mosley, and I don't know, two other guys. Anyway, I said, Alfred, you go upstairs and get all the children out. And I told him it was broken. I said, open this window when you come up the road, and it's, if you go by the basement, there's a window there. I said, open that window up, and I'm gonna jump out, I'm gonna turn over and jump out, and we're gonna burn it down. Mr. Basie comes out and he said, Baba. What you gonna do? I'm gonna burn it down. You can't do that, so he took it. I said, don't help him get the kids out, but he got it back together. But anyways, in my football career, I don't know about you guys, most of you guys, but we always had idols. And everybody wanted to be a Fairfax. Little Gray, Bill Brooks. Most all want to be back. I always want to be Fairfax. I want to carry that ball. But this guy called me, he says, I have a couple uncles that went to Dubois, one went to Bluefield, Robert Stevens, I don't know if you guys know him, All-American and all that. He was a senator. My uncle Steve, he was a senator. So this guy said, oh, and Steve was a senator. And anyway, I tried snapping the ball, so finally if he liked you, he give you a new uniform. So first game, he give me a new pair of pants, and they was too tight. And I got down to snap the ball. I could see the back behind it. It was called 26. And I couldn't see him, but so I snapped it. Arthur Hickman was playing halfback, so I snapped it to Fairfax. Jim Brooks called a foul. He said, you ain't got no play like that. They give us a 5-yard penalty. This guy took me out the game. So somehow or another, I managed to switch me to tackle. And that's where I played the rest of my career. We had some good games, some bad games. I remember one game we were playing Douglas. They were just running those. All of my grandfather had died, and I didn't go to practice. But anyway, they told me, you went to play, he wants you to play. So I went and played. And Smitty was playing guard, and I was playing tackle. I said, Smitty, if you come this way, I'm going to hit him, make him fumble, and you cover. Here he comes. And I socked him, the ball flew in his head. He thought I was a prophet. We had some good times. And one thing about Mr. Scott, whatever he said about him, these things I've heard about him was a discipline. He said, I don't care if you're All-American. You can't do what I say do, I don't need it. And we had guys that left Dubois, went to other schools and made All-State, and they couldn't even make the first team at Dubois. And we had all of our teachers, and I went through things that they taught me, and not only teach, but I was from Hilltop. We were able, the sun went there, you better start going home. Somebody would have to see that you get home, and people would correct you when you were doing Miss Maple Davis. Who know Maple Davis? You know it. We know everything that went on there. She sold whiskey, did everything else, but when they parted, I mean, it's the only cement sidewalk in Hilltop. And I had a wagon. I used to go down and ride the wagon. When the party started getting rough, she says, yes, I hear that you go home. And my grandmother wanted me down there, and then folks started acting up. But what I'm pointing is, I'm trying to say that we, as black folks, and no white people too, they corrected you. And especially more, around Hilltop, I don't know these other places. They had much respect for you as you had for them. And my grandfather was well respected. Whatever decision was made, they'd come to see him. They talked whether or not what should be done, shouldn't be done. So they send you home too. So when that thing started getting rough, she sent us home. And this is what we need in our community. We can't have it. We allow the government to tell us how to raise our children. And the time you spank a child and they come call 911 or somebody, who will put you in jail for correcting your child. All that I'm glad about is my two got raised before this happened. I was there raised and they needed it. And concerned about our children and about the government. And we need to go somewhere and get some House of Representatives and some senators and somebody. Change that, you can't, that man judge doesn't know, he can't tell you how to raise your child, and he can't tell you what your children can do. They say, don't work them. Some of you can't work. I could, and you ain't work me. Some of you can talk to them, you can't talk to all of them. I gotta shut up.
Someone is back here, and I'd love for her to say something.
I think I was one of the youngest graduates. I graduated at 15, and I finished college at 19. And I was on the way, well, I was in the University of Michigan when my mother told me, well, come to Mount Hope. It's awesome. It's going. So I came to Mount Hope and worked at Dubois. Some of my students were same age. Some of them a little older, and I think my brother and I, Randall Charles, we would play together in the evening. Then I'd go back teaching in the morning. They were very respected. And I remember when I first came to Dubois, when I was small, there was the front bar. You go up the steps was the office. And on this side was Mrs. Greer's room, and I believe Mr. Brooks' room. And on the other side was Mr. Scott's room. No, Mr. Canada was downstairs. Mr. Canada and Miss Harrison. And there was a division between the two rooms that when we wanted phys ed for the girls, we would open the petition. And you had the two rooms. That was that auditorium. And on the other side was my room and Mrs. Harris' room. When I was in Mrs. Harris' room, it was all of them taught me anyway. I never could do economics. And so I think the girls would cook hamburgers, cool them under a while, throw them down to the boys in Mr. Lee's room. And so Mrs. Harris said, one day, I think she caught them cooling off the hamburgers. But I happened to go to the store for, so I wouldn't. And so they said, well, what are you doing? Miss Harris said, what are you doing? I said, they are cooling off these hamburgers and throwing them down. But, she taught, well, really, she taught us everything on how to budget, how to buy, how to set up the table. And when I went to Mount Hope High School, they didn't teach that. And he is one of the substitute teachers. So I said, what are you doing at home, Meg? He said, I'm trying to teach you to make bologna sandwich. Anyway, in the early days when I was going to school, they would give all the black teachers a stipend to go to Columbia because we could not go to the West Virginia school. And I think after I came from the University of Michigan, I went to West Virginia University, and believe it or not, we could not stay in the dormitory. We could not eat. I had to stay out in the country. There were two Edward houses which you stayed near till you get your education. And by the way, when I went to Dubois, believe it or not, you know what my salary was? $200 a month.
That's a lot, man.
$200 a month. And that was about 10 years. Actually, we didn't get a good salary until Arch Law came. And so teachers were on the bottom of the totem pole, yet they were real good dressers. And so sometimes we were striking that out. When they said, I know y'all made that little money you and something I don't know how she had this boy say, charge. And she said, that's supposed to be done too much now, charge. But anyway, it was I was determined that I was going to be a good teacher. And when I went to Marshall, and I got my master's from Marshall, one teacher told me they pay 10 years to become a good teacher. So I said, ooh, I pity all those kids. And really almost takes you 10 years to really become what you call a good teacher. You got a lot of knowledge. And I think I've tried to put that knowledge into the kids. But you can't put it there. You have to learn what to do with that knowledge. And it takes you about 10 years to learn what to do with the knowledge. And I remember Mr. Gavis. How many remember Mr. Gavis? Maybe he didn't. He was a coach before.
Yeah, that's
And but he would use that big foot with him. On if you didn't play. Because he used to play around in our yard after school, running with pitchers of water, throwing it on each other. One day Mr. Gator slipped and he just threw my brother here with a pitcher of water. All the time. And every one of the teachers, I think, had taught me. Mr. Scott was my neighbor, and he taught me how to use a paddle. I want to see the boy here now. Davis, I gave a little twist on him one day. And he cried, but I said, oh Lord, please. Please don't let me, what's the name? I think I kind of put that paddle away. But if he wanted a kid paddle, he take him to Mrs. Scott or Mr. Brooks. Mrs. Scott would work on me. They was not working right here. And after we went into the new building, actually, we were so proud of the new building. I think Mr. Barter was the superintendent, and he came over to see. Most of them were getting ready for Mr. Barter, but I was teaching the music at the time. And when we were at Dubois, we did not have an auditorium, as I told you before. And but I had some good groups. I had an excellent for sextet. There's one of my sextet. And we went all over the state. We won first place. And I took the down to the state festival, the choir. But we never did have time. We really didn't have a place to place them on the stage, let them learn how to get up on the stage as we did then. And so I took them down there and I placed them all on the stage and closed the curtain. When I opened the curtain, I said it was the most beautiful picture, but it was also a beautiful sound. We got first place. And but she said, I got 1 minute. I was trying to think of something else interesting. Oh yeah. To get to the school, there were three ways at first before the Delta Road. You'd go up the hill, and then there was another little road beside her house as you go up the hill to the school. And then one group, the house was burned down from Miss Williams, Mr. Howard's place. And you go up the hill that way to get to school that morning. And then after they built the road, the buses would come to the end of town up to the school. That was a way of transportation to Dubois. And we didn't have the money to get all the things that we thought the lights would have, but they didn't have it either. When you went into, after you went into, you found out a lot of things you liked in the white school. But the teachers, I know they would sell candies and all that. And one other thing I remember to get the things that you needed to experiment with and all that. And I was trying to think, on the football team, they did not have any showers or anything for the boys then. And the boys would come to my house, Mrs. Scott's house, and my mother had washed many uniforms in the washer at her house and give them. After that, they dug out two little places, one on Mr. Lisa's side and one over the girl, so that they could put showers in for the football players use at the high school. Now, I really don't go too far back, because they say older people, when they go to school, they always did well in the past, so I really can't remember as much about the past as you would think I should, because I try not to dwell into the past. Because they say that's a good sign of old age. I taught for 41 years in the system. I began teaching at 19, and I quit at And now I am almost 78. And you will hear my youth Sunday, because we have them from Virginia back to Point Pleasant.
I don't have a whole lot to say because I've been enjoying all the other remarks and all the things coming, but I am a graduate of Dubois High School in 1946. And I am from Pax, West Virginia. Of course, all of y'all don't know what Pax is, but it's from 77. Yeah, going south. All right, so anyway, I've enjoyed all of it. It's been nice. And I have a rather bad career. In fact, I'm still going to college. All right. Yeah, I enjoy it. I have another semester and I have my 4 years in. One of them is sign language because I can't hear you. Old age does things like that. But, and then I am painting. I tried to be Grandma Moses, but she left me. Then I'm enjoying it a little bit. But these are the things I enjoy after I had a disability and had to retire a little bit earlier. But I do have my 2 wonderful daughters here with me. I have 2 more on the way. And I have the sisters, my brother-in-law, and nephews, and a lot of my other people here, a lot of things that I need. But I'd like to take time and read this little poem to you, because this will estimate everything, what it would be, and what it has been. Young and high. How do I know my youth has been spent? Because when I get up and go, got up and went. But in spite of all that, I'm able to grin when I think when I get up and go has been. Old age is golden, I've heard it said, but sometimes I wonder as I go to bed. My ears in a drawer, my teeth in a cup, my eyes on a table till I wake up. When I was young, my slippers were red. I could pick my heels right over my head. When I grew older, my slippers were blue, but I could still dance the whole night through. Now I'm old, my slippers are black. I walk through the corner and puff my way back. The reason I know my youth is spent, my get up and go, and got up and went. I get up each morning, dust off my whip, pick up the paper, and read the old bits. If my name is missing, I know I'm not dead. So I eat a good breakfast and go back to bed.
I just want to make one comment. We've talked about the football team, but no one said anything about the band. I remember when Mr. Edmonds came to Mount Dubois High School, was during the summer month. I recall all my brothers were in the band. All the kids went there that summer to the summer camp. He started us off playing the little flute thing. And most of the girls, I ended up being a majorette. He had more majorettes in the band than he had band members. But the bottom line, the band got started, and Mount Dubois had a pretty good band. I just wanted to bring that into.
Good, I'm glad you made that comment.
Some of you are going to wonder what I'm going to say, because I didn't go to Dubois. I didn't go to high school. Why am I speaking here? Well, I left West Virginia in 1946 at 10 years of age, came back a couple of times, and actually did attend the Dubois school in some of the garages around Fanny Ash's house. She happens to be my cousin, my mother's first cousin. So, I attended Dubois for 2 weeks, disrupting classes as a young soldier. And so I do remember quite a few people here, but I speak on behalf of what Dubois has left me as a legacy through my family. See, the Ashes, Tom Ash is my cousin, Fanny Ash is my cousin, Galvin, I hate to admit, is my cousin. Geraldine West, no, it used to be Lewis, Noel, Bernice, all of these are my relatives. The Craigs are my. So I have a legacy here, and all I want to say is this. My brother and I have been discussing this since we started coming back 8 years ago. Some of the things, whatever I am, some of the things that help make me what I am, whatever qualities I have, found have been reflected in the people that I've rekindled my relationship with Dubois. And I want to let you know that I've appreciated that and often wondered why, and some of the ways I think, and some of the decisions I made as a young man in Los Angeles as a gang member, that I had the foresight to not stay there. And now that I reflect on it and see the people, Mrs. Evans, some of you know her, the Evans boys, they'd all beat me up, yelling, everybody complained because I'm smaller. But I learned something from all of you, and it's made a better person of me, I think. And I just want you to know that that's my participation. Yes, I didn't go to Dubois, but I'm part of it. Steve Villanueva is our name. You knew my brother is Philip Lewis. In those days, you didn't really adopt. He assumed Annette Lewis's name, or Anna Lewis's name, because in those days you left kids with people, and that's what happened to him. But he's my brother. My brother Albert's here, and I have a brother Paul, and several children. And it's part of our life, and we're happy to rekindle that. And you've made an impression on us.
Who had one particular distinction at Dubois High School. Nobody could pronounce my name. I'm Naya J. Valentine. I'm on the Shields, the Bookers, the Haleys, the Doziers, and the Valentine clan. In September of 1948, my father took me to Hampton Institute. When he let me off at the dormitory and got me settled, I was scared to death. Hampton Institute was highly competitive, a private college, and my father told me before I went, I'm a coal miner and I can't afford it. But somehow or other, I went through 4 years, but not scared to death. After my freshman year, I got my footing, because what gave me that footing was Joyce, Virginia Harrison, Dorothy Harris, James Russell Lowell Brooks, George Scott, Ruth Hurt, and Addie Hamilton, Mrs. Campbell. And of course, Mr. Hunley and Mr. Ash. That's how I made it. And let's think back to September. We caught the bus. Mr. Saunders was driving. You kept quiet on that bus and you sat knee to knee. And we made it to Dubois High School. We went up that long hill, walked those steps, which we thought were 1,000 steps. We went to our classrooms in an orderly fashion with Mr. Holland holding this little stick on him. And you stayed in line. When you got in your classroom, you were respectful. You were in Dubois High School. When they integrated, I cried because we lost a heck of a lot. We lost love, we lost caring because the teachers loved us and they taught us. And it didn't make any difference if you had to stay back. So what? You stayed back, but we were going to prepare you for what lay ahead. And Hampton Institute was way out of my range. Way out of my range. But I stuck with what I had learned at Dubois. I got a tiny little scholarship from Pensacola. I was the 4th in my graduating class. And thank God, I got something else too. A lot of common sense, how to deal with people of all sorts. And I also grew up, born in Minden, Arbuckle Creek, across from the Tipple, as a coal miner's daughter. Thank God I'm proud of Dubois and being a coal miner's daughter.
My name is Marvell Straughter of IME Coal. And like the lady that just spoke, that she probably recognizes my last name as being African from the Yoruba people of Nigeria. I want to say something about some things that happened to, we had a crippled brother. And I think I was the more devoted child in helping him get up that hill. Warren walked with a cane and a crutch. And then there were boys like Sylvester, we always called that. He and some of the Matthews and other folks used to just take Warren up and run up the hill with him. They were wonderful boys. But when they went away on trips, like on the sucking phone, I missed those boys because that meant I had to get him up there myself. I had a sister there at that time. All the other sisters came along after us. But Audrey was always, that was my older sister. And she was very pretty and very honest child in high school, and she never wanted to help me. She didn't dress like me, she didn't look like me, you know, I had on very salon dress. And she wore high heel shoes. And so she took no part in that particular responsibility of getting him up and down the hill. But eventually Warren went to Ghana in his last year and graduated from Garden High School in Charleston. And we didn't have to worry about getting him up and down the hill. I want to ask you a question. Do any of you remember that tremendous operetta that Miss Lawson did in 1941, My Cherry Brown? Nobody? It was a Japanese operetta. You don't even, oh, anyway, Audrey had a very active part in that. And sometimes now, the songs that the kids sang, I never could sing. But Audrey could, and she was part of that operetta. It was Japanese. And she wanted schools to sponsor it again the following year. Well, by that time, we were in war with Japan. And a lot of people frowned on that. Well, you know, why should we be spreading Japanese culture? When we were having a war with those people. So it was put off. But it was one of my more pleasant memories, so that's why I wanted to mention it. I was not even a part of it, other than being a student there at the time. But my older sister had an important part in the operetta. I can't believe anybody remembers that. But anyway, there's something else I've got to tell you. Mr. Scott, George Scott, he was really tough, not only on the field, but in the classroom. But he had a way of treating you rather special. He thought you were special. I remember Mr. Scott in his last class. He said to us, he really was ridiculing us just like he did you guys to make you come into your own. And there he was standing up lecturing one day in algebra class. And he got angry for some reason or another, and he said, they really put us all down. And I guess that was his way of starting to bring us up, when I think about him. But he commented on our home life. I bet you don't have this at home. I bet you don't do this. And I bet you what you know about this and that you learned right downstairs in this Harris room. And I felt so offended. Because I thought Mother had done a job on raising us. I didn't come in home economics room learning how to set a table. I knew that when I came to high school. But that did happen. And by the way, I didn't think I'd see anybody here that was in my class. I graduated in 1943. And I was actually supposed to have graduated in 1944. But the war was on. And it came down the pipe that any student, boy or girl, who had 11 credits or more, at the end of the 10th year could go on into the senior class. There were 3 of us. Me, Fanny Champion, and someone else. Who? I don't really remember. I don't even remember if it was a girl or a boy, but I know there was a 3rd person. And he chose not to take it. I gotta sit down a minute. The time is up. But let me finish talking. He chose not to take it, and Fanny and I did. So we graduated that year earlier. In 1943. Yes, one other thing I can jot it down here. Oh, back to Mr. Scott. Mr. Scott was a wonderful to stay there, be there, suffer whatever you may, and go on up at education. And when I finished high school, the government was in need for a lot of people to work. And I went on Walter and worked for the Social Security for about 3 years. And when I returned home, I became a student at Dubois State College. And I married a man from Africa. As I said before, from the Yoruba people. He was born in Sierra Leone. And I went there to live when he became employed by the World Health Organization. And we lived in my here for about 4 years. And when we returned home after 10, 12 years, he was given an international assignment with the State Department. And we were there until he retired, like about 10 years ago, and he passed away last year.
Thank you so much.
I have to stop now, and my reason for saying this is we said 10 to 12, and you are scheduled to do some other things. I have enjoyed this experience. It is wonderful to hear your personal memories of your journey. There are some issues we didn't talk about. There were some issues we didn't touch at all. We didn't touch on how you got information about your own people and your own self. That's a piece that needs to be discussed. I mean, you have a school that's named after a very famous person. There has to be some relationship to what West Virginians were thinking. We should have discussed that. But like everything else that comes suddenly and in, we're ending this. I'm reminded that yesterday, he informed me that one of the coolest
picnic, I believe, was in May. So they were out of school. This is wonderful, by the way. I'm not an emotional person. I've just been crying since you started talking. It's absolutely wonderful. Seniors were out of school that day. I remember an announcement came over the intercom, said something to the effect, if you are in 11th grade, you go to maybe the library. If you are in 10th grade, you go to the cafeteria. We are in Dubois High School, the replacement school. It is 2 years old. It has all of the things that a high school should have. Mostly, let's put it that way. It is 2 years later. I was in the 10th grade. I remember sitting in the cafeteria. I remember people coming in. I remember E.W. Dunkley, who became the principal. I don't know what he was. There was an entourage of people that came in. E.W. Dunkley is the only name I remember. I remember being told, if you lived, you had to listen out for where you lived, because schools were going to integrate. I remember very well not being sure how to spell the word. If you live in this place, you will go to that school. If you live in this place, you will go to that school. If you live on the other side of the company store in Scarborough, which is where I live, you will come to Mount Hope. We remember hearing all this. It was like total confusion. As Mrs. Fleming reminded me the other day, no, sorry, it was Dorothy Harris I talked to last Sunday on the phone. Please remind me to give her phone number. She wants to make public. I talked to Dorothy Harris for 4 hours. Somebody said, what about our clubs? You don't have anymore. They don't exist. Nothing existed. We all aspired to clubs. It's like these are people we've been to school with for 2 years and we didn't know what was going on. We wouldn't see them anymore. I have been coming back home to do my reunions. And I have been, okay, I got it. I've been wondering what happened to people. Ronnie says I'm too emotional. I've been wondering what happened to people. It finally dawned on me why I couldn't remember graduating with somebody. It was because we had been split up. And I totally missed that one. But it was like, if you live here, you will go to this school. You will go to that school. That was the middle of May. In September, it was Mount Hope High School. Nothing else that happened in Dubois existed. The boys knew each other because they played football and they practiced. The girls, we didn't know each other. Bernice Peaks, who's not here right now, Bernice Peaks, now I think that's when we became friends. We decided we are going to join all of these new clubs, whatever they were. We joined them. Last year, Kat and I and some other Mount Hope High School students, we had a class reunion. We graduated in 58. I got a yearbook to make copies of it, and I'm looking through and I see my picture. I lived over in a hall in Scarborough. Bernice and I decided we were going to join these organizations because if we don't, there will not be any evidence that we even existed. I'm looking at my picture 40 years ago. I don't remember ever going to one meeting. Because the meetings were in Mount Hope. We didn't have a way to get to Mount Hope from over in the hollow. We had no way to get there. Another good thing that happened. After the reunion, well, as part of the reunion, we had a breakfast on that Sunday morning in the school, which, in case many of you don't know, the plaque that says Dubois is still there. It is there. Some of you that are older than I don't like to think of that as being Dubois High School, but it is. It is there. The plaque is there. The only other evidence you have of Dubois High School is Roy's probably rolling her finger behind her right now. These steps are still up there in the woods. They are still there. I have some absolutely gorgeous pictures of them. But that's how it was announced. That's how it was. You have picked up and gone on. We have. But that's what happened to us, and that's what we have to deal with. And I want everybody to know that is my only son there doing the video. That's Chris Lord, Washington, and he just got home today. Okay, I'd like to also add to you, as you heard me say, I talked to Mrs. Harris for 4 hours. She's as clear as a bell, and I gotta go home and get a phone number because I forgot to bring it with me. She lives out in Milwaukee. She was Dorothy Harris Christian. You will see her commencement over there on the wall. She graduated in 1925. Her name was Dorothy Christian, which I learned last year talking to Norma Christian in Oak Hill. I didn't know that. We have one teacher that was here. Now, Miss Harris is very much alive, honey. She can talk here. Mrs. Fleming. Mrs. Fleming was at Dubois High School. Mrs. Watkins, Elise Watkins, the first graduate of Dubois High School, 1921, is still alive. I don't know if she's in D.C. She's in D.C. with Bobby Lewis, her son. I think Bobby Lewis graduated in 1956. There are many stories left. The Humanities Council, I don't know if there's anybody from the Humanities Council here. I expected there would be, but I don't think there's anybody that I don't recognize here. The Humanities Council basically funded this project. I took it to the reunion committee, which is Dubois Alumni Association, and said, this is what I want to do. I think many people didn't quite understand what, but I think right now, after this, they will. One of the things we need everybody to do in your packages.
Sorry. Okay. Before we go, I'm going to interject a little something here because something is happening to our schools right now. And my dear friend Ben Wright, who is on our school board, he and I have been involved in Glenville State, and he's still teaching there. But I hope that Danny can just feel what's going on here now and what Jean has said has occurred and take it back to our board members because we're getting ready to lose our school. And I'm a teacher at Mount Hope High School. Jean and I attended both Dubois and Mount Hope. It's very emotional to me because our community schools produce what you all say. This experience, what's going on now. We're fighting so
publicly thank Reverend Dr. Stuart Frazier, who probably has spent at least 15 hours this week helping. He sat on my living room floor for about 5 hours one night, stuffing and stapling what you folks have in front of your hand. He has helped set this up. He has been very, very, very helpful. As I said, the Humanities Association funded this. Norman and Priscilla Jordan, you heard me mention earlier, Norman and Priscilla Jordan are sitting right there. They have the African American Museum at Instead. They're the only people that have a museum that's doing something about African American history. We have to be very supportive of it. Norman is actually the character that we're going to see in a couple of hours down at his place in Instead. We're going to make a little trip here and there, and we will get down there. I'd like everybody to be aware it's important that we have the evaluations completed. We must have the evaluations done. I have to report everything that's been going on, and the evaluations form that's sent out that the Humanities Council has done. Please complete the form. It's in your folder. On the first, right under the welcome.
Left-hand side.
Some of them are yellow, many of them are yellow, some of them are white. Okay? Please complete it. It's perfect. I left some pens on the table. But if you just complete it and leave them on the table, that'll be all right. Then we'll collect them later. I'd like to really thank my buddy brother. I think my witness store did an excellent job of leading this discussion. Mr. Grass's wife, where are you? There you are. Is he up there? Oh, okay. He was going to be here around 12 or 12:30. But it's important. We didn't take a break purposely, so that you have time to take a break after this. Does anybody else have any comments they'd like to make? I didn't hear. Speak now or say after all your teeth. You know what? Right now.
People around the bus.
Roya did this and she doesn't have a seat. And I really think you deserve that.
Nobody wants to sit in the back of the bus anymore.
Thank you. He was given the rules of the bus, which would have been great to have on tape.
Oh, the rules?
Yes.
You can do it again.
Mr. Grassley.
I can go back there and do it again.
He's going to go back there and need you to get the bus rules again.
Maybe you can forget them.
It was.
It might have been 4 in the front.
That was good time.
Like tours. I ain't good at this.
The bus rules will be given to you when you're halfway to the on the road. Thank you.
You guys good? Yeah, I'm ready.
I don't allow no smoking, no standing, no jumping from seat to seat. Now, my name is Melvin Grassley.
Hi, Melvin.
All right, and you're all. Hello. Now, we're going to have a good time today, right?
Yeah.
I can see out of one eye and I'm blind out the other.
Please don't get us lost.
Huh?
Please don't get us lost.
Do you know your name? That's how I do know your name. I don't know the Dubois, but I want the Simmons. We keep everybody else If I do something wrong with you, don't feel bad.
Right.
really considered one of the best stadiums around.
It is.
Grafton said the Lions Club owns it, so I defer to Grafton. I just moved back here for
The boys never have a problem when it comes to that. Let's go. Everybody's just chilling.
Back there forward is what was built as the new Dubois High School. Inside the door,
We'll get a better picture later.
find the flag. The men from the different cold camps had their baseball teams. And the kids would come, because it's a family event, and you would come, and I just realized this recently, we came and we'd eat hot dogs.
Right.
And I wondered why in the world West Virginia eat hot dogs, and then it dawned on me, that was a treat for you when you came to the baseball game to get a hot dog. So our lunch, we're going to go to Tom's, and you know how they make their money? Hot dogs.
And you know who sold those hot dogs at those ball games?
I think it was a
My father.
So I heard, if you didn't go to church, you couldn't go to the baseball game? If you didn't go to church, you couldn't go to the baseball game?
Oh yes, oh yes. So they say they pull off from that boat to the whitewater down to
Yes, sir.
That's that Peg Leg Bake guy. Excuse me, you know what you're talking about Silent Spring? Where's Emma Owens? Emma Owens Jones, I think it's her uncle or cousin, was with the Silent Spring. Mr. Harry Tinsley was with Silent Spring. Your uncle or cousin, Harry Tinsley, was with Silent Spring. And your family used to get free tickets. Emma Owens Jones, her uncle, her cousin, was with Silent Spring. His name was Harry Tinsley. And by the way, right here is the McCall Bank. And he owned the coal company.
He owned the coal company?
Yeah.
And he owned the bank too?
The bank, yeah.
Well, the company store was right over here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
It's all right across the street.
And the phone room.
That's the bank.
Come out here tomorrow to see where the water is.
Yeah, the water's right there. The funeral home?
On top of here was Scarlett Funeral Home. He was a white film director who also owned a place down in Thurman. Emma's uncle also worked for yes, right. And I understand that he heard a lot of the black people in this region, especially in Harvard. Yes. And I understand that he was when he came, he also cried with the family.
Well, if you didn't have any money, you still got dirty.
He cried more with the
think it's still over there.
They use it as a.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes.
The white building?
That was at the county. Mr. Hughes was his father, and I was a company store. A Whipple company store.
Whipple company store.
Well,
This was my house.
People just sitting in their chairs. You better be in shape if you're going to walk up and down these mountain roads. This bus is going, I think they Okay, we just got finished eating, right? Just finished eating, now we're going to another tour somewhere. We don't know where, but we're going. Tanya.
We had to walk from back up in Newtown to catch the bus here. They had to come from the top of the hill, from the bottom, to catch the bus here. So this was the central location of catching the bus.
Word is the loving to the hands.
The loving, we had it.
She said the good part.
Where's City Hall? City Hall.
City Hall was at the Joneses residence.
They got their race cars out.
Yeah.
This was a union hall. Some of these local union halls. Local union.
We just passed what they call the Union Hall. Dubois had one
The
place.
hazard car.
And this is where we used to have our talent shows that was it was started at Dubois and coming to the community. We used to have them there at the Union Hall. Yes, that's how the 9x12.
Which place?
I've been at the Regis. I moved here.
In the county, all the counties over there. Yeah, counties over
More down the hill. My father purchased land from him.
Lovin's grandfather
Right.
owned it.
And he also, all of his sons, most of his sons had houses here. This is where Leon Loving and his mother and father lived. Wade Harris and her mother and father lived here. The old Greg was here. Back further was Bobby Loving and Patty Loving's family. And Peter Fry. And then Peter Fry in Pennsylvania. First generation Europeans lived out here, and we call Rosedale. The Navajas lived here. And here was Tip-Top Cabin. He owned about 4 houses. And Pete said he liked us. We came back here. And he said, yes, all of my boys, some of them to live in Sun. Tip-Top Cabin with all subdivided. Yeah, you can look at the back door and say, my dad or my cousin or whoever sent me up to get a half a pint or pint, and they would bring it to the back door. Give it to us. All the little water. But in other places,
Coming to the end of the tape.